All right, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Mark, President of the Oz DeFi Association. We started 2.5 years ago as a little WhatsApp group. David, who's here, where are you, David? David was one of our original members when he was back in Adelaide, Sydney, I don't know where you were. Yes, clap. That's worthy of a clap. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone, over here at Hopgood. Is that 4? 5? Hopgood, 5. So QR code, if you were interested, there's links there, there's a calendar, there's a newsletter, there's all sorts of good things. We've got some amazing folks in the audience and stuff as well who do cool things too. So there's a lot of events happening this week in Brisbane. So this is almost like Blockchain Week, but it's just Brisbane. So well done on showing up, Sydney. For whatever reason, they decided Blockchain Week this year was just going to be mainly Sydney stuff. So I think this is a good response back. All right, so yes, we've got the doors open. Yes, we did the networking. Now we're going to do the updates and then hear from some folks. I do keep lists like this. I've got ADD, so unless I do this, like it keeps me off track. So we've got Hopgood. I'm going to get Pier Two up straight after you. Where's Jack? Jack right there. Then we'll go to Cadena, Damian, SwyftX, Pier Two, Syla, everyone here. We were going to have Oz CryptoCon as well. David Haslop, who runs that, but he couldn't make it, unfortunately. So we'll just have to make him jealous. So in terms of updates, we had our recent event back in Sydney. On the right there, you got Rob from Cloud Tech Group, one of our main sponsors. You had Block Damian. They flew in from Singapore to share what they're doing in the infrastructure space. It was recorded. So if you go to our YouTube, which is on the links, we'll bring that back up so you can see that. Hannah and Jazz from a rival law firm. Can I say rival law firms, or I'm not allowed to say that?
I wasn't ready for so much slag.
Oh, okay.
5 minutes. This isn't in my notes.
Okay, good.
But no, you can't.
It's even better. So aforementioned non-mentioned law firm, we do Domino's, so I really appreciate the much better catering this time. I'm kind of sick of Domino's, even though I had it for dinner last night. And they're not a sponsor, but there were some really cool things happening, really great presenters, and yeah, so if you're ever in Sydney, check the calendar, there's cool events there. Cloud Tech have in Melbourne this really cool new gallery called ANNG. I thought the G stood for gallery, but it's ANNG gallery. So anyway, it's like a ATM machine. But they've got a really cool space, and we had Ben from Collective Shift there. We had Trent before he's moving off to the Middle East was presenting from Zero Cap, and Liam. And Perth had some really cool events recently, so I'm heading over there on the 28th. So if anyone wants to fly over with me, let me know. Yeah, we'll cross all paths in Australia. So Perth's later this month. This year we're doing like 40 events across Australia, 4 cities, 10 events per city, which is good. Hands up here who knows Real Vision? A few of you? Very good. They were in town. Raoul Powell, he's really tall, or I'm just really short. So you can see there, my co-founder Arturo, Raoul Powell in the middle. Apparently that's 6'1". I thought I was like, if that's 6'1", maybe I'm like 5 feet tall. But anyway, it is definitely the camera angle because we had to get the Opera House in there. So they did a really good event, and it's a real world kind of project that they were partnering with called Club Devin, so decentralized wine. So that was a really cool panel that they spoke about. One of the cool things was that as soon as you open up the cork on the wine, so you can get purchase data when people buy things on chain. That's fine. But with wine, people don't consume it straight away. Sometimes it's even a decade later that they actually consume stuff. So they've got new technology that records stuff on blockchain as soon as someone's opened the cork, like it's smart cork technology. Who knew such a thing? But Tim loves it. So I'm just going to pay stuff to Tim, because Tim is behind all of this, being able to bring us here. And so we really appreciate Hopgood. 6 times. Good. All right. So Blockchain Week. Who was, anyone here go to Blockchain Week or see some of the stuff online? A few of you. So that's where the industry comes together. They made a big announcement. They're going to be called DECA, which is Digital Economy Council of Australia. So making it much more mainstream. It's not just the blockchain technology. It'll still be a lot about that, but it allows a lot more different companies and individuals to come into this future of finance, future of commerce space. And now the presentations, before I jump into it, I just got one little thing that we wanted to present on. So I run this, but I work for a company called Not Centralized. We've done various kinds of projects, NFT projects, digital kind of like asset tokenization kind of projects. A recent thing that we're doing is in the real world asset tokenization space, which will be coming out in the news with as soon as we finish the project in a few weeks. But one of the key tenets of this is that blockchain's great, but it's pseudonymous. It's not confidential. It's not anonymous. So if businesses are coming on board, Tim and I, again, thank you for the example, if Tim and I do some work together and he pays me or I pay him, he can see my wallet, I can see his, then I've got like the OX ETH address and I can't exactly see what those things are, but you can see margins. That's not good for businesses and counterparties. So we created something that takes care of that. There's confidentiality by default with Layer C, which is a product that we built. And there's also other things in there apart from the selected disclosure, such as digital escrows. So escrows are really hard to do. A lot of construction companies don't do it. And so you see all these things happen where they don't know how much they're going to be paid if they are going to get paid. But with blockchain, it's really easy. So we bring that layer to it. Redbelly, who we partnered with, is an Australian blockchain platform, and they are confidential by nature. It's KYC'd, which I know may be a dirty word for some, but in business, many need that kind of stuff. So partnering with them and also Maneuver for the on-ramps, off-ramps. We're working on, it's basically, rent rolls. So it's those things, it's worth, I think, $2.7 billion worth of RWA tokenization. So it'll be a good thing to put on the map that Australia is doing this kind of stuff. We've got a big real estate market. Rent rolls is just a small portion, but when you look at other RWA projects going on in the world, this will be right up there when we finish. So all of those things coming together, just like what happened with the CBDC pilots, etc., that the RBA did, a lot of collaboration there. So I'm really keen to see this one. If anyone wants to talk about that, we spoke about it. There will be a replay from the Sydney event. I'm happy to chat about it, what I can say. And with that, Tim from Hopgood.
So we'd sort of planned for this to be an interview, and then I only bothered to arrange one mic. So I'm going to say a few things, then Mark's going to yell stuff at me. I actually think you might be 6'1", because I didn't have to adjust this at all for me. So I'm from Hopgood. I'm not going to ramble about that. The name's now been said 10 times by my count. We're a full-service national law firm with about 200 lawyers. We have a digital assets team that runs on what I call immaturely the Avengers model, where it's not a dedicated section. We have stars from each of our traditional teams which come together and work in the crypto context using their traditional law expertise. I run and coordinate that, but my specialty is litigation. So if given the chance, that's what I'll ramble about today. And that's when you were meant to ask me a question.
Who are you?
Hi, I'm...
No, well, I was going to ask, if people don't know Hopgood, what are the things that they need to know about what you guys do for businesses in this space and projects?
Well, it's a good question. So as I said, we do the full service stuff. So we have corporate lawyers, tax lawyers, wills and estates lawyers, litigators. But sort of our specialty would be startups that we manage to grow with that become growth size national businesses. We have a few international clients. I'd be stupid not to drop that we acted for Meta when they were going to launch that NFT thing. That was amazing because I gave this really risky advice and then they canned the project and no one ever tested me on it. So hopefully all records of that are destroyed. So we do have the occasional international client like that, but otherwise we're small enough to actually be controlled in Australia and deal with startups and growth companies, but big enough that we have that expertise of 200 lawyers, some of them pretty good, some of them in this room instead. But, does that answer the question?
It's a pretty good answer. I wanted to know a bit more about, and we've discussed this, you were at Blockchain Week and you had some would say some spicy stuff to say on stage. I just thought that maybe you could share what you were talking about there to the lovely audience here.
Can't recycle the jokes because some of you were there and are here. If you guys could just laugh if you hear that joke again anyway. But so I actually get to be a pretty much full-time digital assets litigator at the moment. And that was sort of the dream, but I didn't expect it to come this quickly. And it's come this quickly for a few reasons. And they're all sort of symptoms of the industry maturing. But that means our regulator is really aggressive at the moment, and more's coming, and I can talk about that a bit more. The worldwide macroeconomic climate is suited to litigation. Traditional markets are up, but there's also wars going on. That tends to lead to people suing each other. And there are some really sophisticated entities entering the space. And just as with any traditional market, people are suing each other. So there's that activity around. But the thing that I went on, I think what could be described as a rant about at you're nodding viciously, it was definitely a rant, at Blockchain Week was just how active ASIC is being in this space and the attitude it's taking. So firstly, if you're ASIC and you're in the room, you have to tell me. Or if you're a cop and you're in the room, you have to tell me. Or the ATO has to tell. Thanks, Damian. That's. Can we move him back if you wrote? Yeah. So it's running test cases. It's running cases that it's saying just to clarify the law. But then it's not necessarily viciously appealing them, and it's getting ready to enforce them immediately, which is not typically what regulators have done with test cases, because it doesn't decide a whole raft of issues. It usually decides one specific thing on a few facts. ASIC seems ready to start enforcing the coin decision against exchanges and companies. Letters will be coming out in the next month, or else your next meetup ticket is free. Am I allowed to? Anyway,
you can say that. You can say that. All meetups are free from now on. They always were.
Sorry. So they're doing that, but it's not this welcome new investment, welcome innovation stuff in the space. ASIC is going around and meeting with clients and saying, we want to get to know you. And then it's sending them a letter a while after, and it's wanting to run test litigation. And when it's doing so, it's seeking expertise from outside of ASIC to help run it. Because after it's already set out on that path, it's realised it needs the help. Poor segue, one of the matters I'm working on at the moment, and I can only say so much about it, you might have heard of the NGS crypto stuff on the Gold Coast. Big blockchain mining operation. Some stuff happened. ASIC decided to freeze about 70 mil worth of crypto and take all their stuff. It did it by putting in external receivers to help it and go and freeze all the crypto. Because, to be fair, it knew it didn't have the expertise to do that. And I'm acting for those receivers, chasing the crypto. But it seems, I think what I can say is it seems clear from those experiences and other ones I've had, ASIC is interested in starting cases and getting judgments. And this industry has now got to a point where a lot of players this is the unpopular, this is the spicy part I think you're referring to, a lot of players who started small and cut corners as you need to survive as a startup. Everyone knows that. I won't admit that at not a meetup. Everything here is privileged, by the way. But I won't admit that all the time, but you need to in many startups. But a lot of those startups are now way, way bigger and still cutting the same corners. And ASIC isn't going to ignore it anymore. So now's the time to sort of check a lot of that before it starts spamming letters and suing people. It's just hired like 6 more people into its enforcement team. Now is your chance to sort of dodge it. That's like a super uplifting opening, isn't it? Yeah, big thumbs up.
I feel inspired.
Well, now's your chance to before they go hard, before, God forbid, they somehow get another win in court.
I was going to say, rather than me ask a question, I was going to give to anyone who wants to ask a question in the audience. This is free legal advice, by the way. Anyone?
You can and should rely on it.
Yes, Amanda.
What are your thoughts on the block earner appeal, ASIC's appeal of the block earner piece, where the court had originally given the ability for a block earner not to pay damages? What are your thoughts in relation to ASIC's appeal of that piece?
I think
that
ASIC
felt a little petty.
No, I agree. I had never seen, I'm sure there have been, I haven't read them all, no matter what I say after 2 or 3 more drinks. I haven't read them all, but I'd never seen a penalty waived on a case like this. And my impression seemed to be that the court was really shitty with the way ASIC had run the case. And it was sort of, it gave them a slap. Now ASIC's in this weird position where, yeah, it did run it shitty. It's in the judgment. It's all pretty clear. But if it lets that happen, it will have the market thinking sometimes there will be no penalties, and it can't stand that. I don't really understand how poor running of a case can lead to there being no penalty, but there is a discretion in the public interest where Block Owner pulled the product, didn't it? So what was the harm? It's just a test case to get a scalp. And that's why I think they've got a chance of dodging the penalty from here. And my view is that would be the best application of discretion, but there isn't sort of a bank of cases or past results you can rely on to predict that stuff. It's going to come down to the attitude of the court and what they think of ASIC. I'm hoping they'll be critical of the whole test case litigation thing because it's so aggressive and it's so unfair for the person hit with it, unless they're super rich.
Mr. Lawyer, sir.
Yes.
How do you think AI can help, whether it's in this particular use case that you're describing here, or in future for projects that are, looking to navigate the regulation kind of murkiness that is what we've got currently?
I mean, I think for the regulation thing, it can help with translation and summarising. So it can help people understand it to a better extent without having to talk to someone like me, God forbid. I think it can help, once it properly is used in law firms, lower the cost of... Keep walking, sorry. A colleague standing at the door. It can help lower legal fees, I think, by helping law firms to be more efficient, so more people have access to that justice and have the ability to defend, say, silly suits from regulators or from counterparties. So I think there's efficiency there. But I mean, the way that I'd use it, like an unqualified lawyer, paralegal type equivalent, someone whose work I always have to check, but who can save me a lot of time. Is that the approved AI-friendly answer?
I was going to say maybe making things even memeier. Here's my meme coin, and you tell the AI make it memeier or something. But I think we've got a real question over here.
Gonna say. Yeah.
Just a nice, easy one for you, Tim. So with what you're saying,
Who let him in?
With what you were saying before about how now is a good time for people to come and actually talk to a lawyer and maybe change the practices they're in, with how ASIC's actually reacting to these sorts of things, if hypothetically you have this immutable record of all the shortcuts you've taken, will ASIC view, like if you change today and do things all above board, will they then view that as good enough, or are you still going to be a bit in trouble?
You could still be a bit in trouble. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying you're less likely to be noticed. B, it should be relevant how much... I mean, they're coming from a consumer protection lens. So it would limit the extent to which harm is still being caused to consumers. And that's definitely something the court's considering. It's why things like no penalties end up being a thing. I had something clever to say to that, but it's completely escaped me.
The AI will do it.
No, hang on. Wait. AI will do it. I'll come back to you if I think about it. That's a pass though, right?
We've got two more questions before we go to the next presenter.
Yep.
Hi. Hi, thanks. So I saw what happened to this guy in the Netherlands who was a developer in blockchain and he got jailed for what he built. And I am a former developer in blockchain in Australia. I still play on the side, but I'm very cautious to come back in the field because I see all this aggression that you're seeing. Should developers be worried that if we build for a company that we may become something like that Netherlands case?
I think it makes sense to be careful while we've got an aggressive regulator looking for scalps. But I think you can sort a lot of that with the contract you broker with the company. You can get releases or indemnities and get them to bear the risk if they're the one getting the benefit as well. I mean, a lot of those contracts, you're not really keeping ownership of the product at the end, so why should you be liable? So there can be a fair bit of risk shifting. That will never be perfect, but you can do things to go a long way there. Not a super comforting answer, but it's something.
Except that was a criminal matter in the Tornado Cash, and that's why he's been put in jail.
Yeah.
And they've got sufficient evidence to identify with the discovery of it that it was solely designed initially for money laundering.
And that's where...
Allegedly. No, not allegedly. It's not. They've got the evidence, Lucas.
Allegedly.
Allegedly have the evidence. Yeah.
If we go to Bo's question, and then we're going to go to the next presenter.
Yeah, Tim, I just have a quick question. We talked a bit in Sydney about it as well. We've seen some of most of the Australian exchanges taking off yield earnings on crypto at the start of the year. Do you see that coming back in Australia anytime soon? And what would it take for companies to start providing that service again in Australia?
Unless it's sort of more of a staking thing where you're merely providing a technical service, I don't think many conservative lawyers will be telling any of their clients to start that back up again without an AFSL or regulation change. There's too much, at the very least, ambiguity with it. I told most of my clients to take it offline when block owner came down.
But you can't do it if you get the license?
Yeah, no, that's the barrier. There's a way to do it with regulation. It's just the barrier is an AFSL. I'd be telling people who really want to do it just to hurry up and get their AFSL. All right, I won't take any more time. Had a good run.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. That was the
I
most.
thought you were coming in for a hug.
I was going like this, and we were going to
need
do the
this, though?
awkward. Yeah.
This is
I need
typical. This is every interaction we have.
Jack, please. What? Every interaction we have is awkward. Yes.
No.
Hello everyone, I'm Jack. I'm one of the co-founders of Pier Two, and I also sit on the board of Blockchain Australia, now called DECA. Thanks to Hopgood, Tim, for having us all here tonight. And yeah, definitely Mark as well, having 40 events this year, that gives me anxiety. So yeah, great work that you guys are doing, Mark, and thanks for having us all. So I want to talk about Pier Two. Mark's asked me just to run through very quickly what Pier Two is, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to take questions at the end. So we are one of the top Ethereum staking operators in APAC with now over $3 billion worth of assets under stake and delegation on our infrastructure. We were set up in 2018 in Australia, in Brisbane, and since that time have provided secure node and validation services. For those that have watched us for a while, we're one of the first Chainlink node operators in 2018, built out this infrastructure business to now include staking and a few other things as well that I'll get into. One other thing I'll mention as well is a light client that we're building that I know a few, including Lucas in this room, are excited about that. So on staking, I mentioned Ethereum, but we also support other leading proof-of-stake chains, including Solana, Near, Polygon, and more. Our customers that we work with, it's all B2B, institutional customers, so exchanges, custodians and funds in Australia and APAC more broadly. I've included some graphs there that are too difficult to read, but we're proud that in Australia, on this sort of weird island on the other side of the world to a lot of our competitors, we are performing right at the top globally in terms of everyone in this market, and that's basically what the graphs say. I mentioned the Chainlink stuff, and we still do things that we call network services. So we'll work directly with some of the leading protocols in this space in the world. This started with Chainlink. We actually supported the first Bitcoin and Ethereum to US dollar price feeds on Ethereum mainnet. So we got a pretty good look at what was happening in DeFi at that time, which was cool. But yeah, we now work across a whole different bunch of these opportunities. So Lido do LSTs, Eigenlayer do restaking, EtherFi do LRTs, Babylon do Bitcoin scaling, SSV do DVT, so like multi-signing processes for validators, and Arbitrum, they're an example of L2. So we do a heap of this stuff. It's probably going to be boring, so I won't go into it too much further, but happy to take questions on it. And then finally with Lantern, this is something we're really excited about. We've been working on it for the last 18 months. We're building a light client in C# for Ethereum with support from the Ethereum Foundation. So we're one of the client teams. What we're trying to do here is create stateless read and write to Ethereum. That'll be Ethereum mainnet, but in the future, we'll start working with a few of the L2s as well to bring a light client to their L2 environments. And then also we're in the early stages of working with like IoT device manufacturers as well to start to build in some software that can make Ethereum much more usable, hopefully in the future. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. I'll try not to get too distracted by it in the months ahead. And then, yeah, I'm sorry guys, I got to run off early tonight, but got some details there. You can share the slides if anyone wants to reach out. But as I mentioned, happy to take questions now if there are any.
Any questions, folks?
What's a light client?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We first saw light clients on Ethereum really quite early in Ethereum's development, where you were able to run a full client on your mobile phone and send transactions to the Ethereum blockchain, which you would want to do if you're sending Ethereum to another Ethereum address, or any sort of application that looks like that interacting with smart contract. Or if you just wanted to check how much Ethereum you had, which is like the classic wallet interaction where, a lot of the Fireblocks or your exchanges, they use clients to check what your balance is on Ethereum mainnet. Anyway, what started happening with Ethereum in the early days is people started using it and the state started getting quite heavy, meaning that then to interact with the Ethereum blockchain, you needed to have already stored quite a lot of state or be running a full client. And so what then started to happen is we saw what we call RPC markets begin to emerge, where instead of running your own full client, you'd then go and pay someone, there's some free to use ones, but pay an RPC provider to effectively access the Ethereum blockchain. And I don't know how you guys feel, I don't know how some of you feel, but this sort of it goes against the Ethereum ethos, I think, to have to sort of outsource your ability to access the Ethereum blockchain. But the hurdle has always been the fact that you do need to, if you don't want to do that, have a lot of storage on your device, which does actually prohibit, in my opinion, a lot of the mobile devices, even while they've been getting better. That's a long way to say a light client is a way to run a client on a mobile device or an IoT device, which is effectively stateless. You don't have to store the full state of the Ethereum blockchain. We've created effectively another way to keep up to date with Ethereum state, which at the moment uses sync committee data, and it will effectively allow you to read, both read and write Ethereum state from a lighter device.
One more question. Oh, hang on. Sorry, because otherwise we can't get it on the recording. Sorry. Not sorry.
Well, now I forgot my question. Is that going to help with the worry of centralization with the certain amount of client nodes that we have, or it's the same thing of saying that we don't want to have the RPC providers because ultimately we're relying on them. So is that going to help with that potential issue?
Yeah, definitely. I think it, you can see today a lot of the RPC, do you want to jump in? I imagine your question's going to be related to this as well in some way.
I'm curious, why C#? It's such a you're making C# cool again. It's great, for people my age, but it's not hot. It's not Rust. It's not Go. TypeScript guy. It's not Python. Look, I'm curious for
the guy who's actually writing this in C#, I'm not a developer, is a lot smarter than me, and he sees opportunities with C# to align with the .NET community, to align with Microsoft, to align with effectively. So that's one answer. The other answer is there's not currently a client team building in C# in this area, so we can plug that gap and know that we actually are going to help the Ethereum community by writing in C#. Yeah.
Fantastic. Got time for one more, or you got to go?
No, one more, of course, yeah.
All right, one more, folks. Hang on a sec.
Why are you building a light client? How does it contribute to the business? Is it just a public goods thing, or is you hoping to sell that or anything like that?
No, it's a great question. So it does contribute to the business. I think the Ethereum validator market right now is such that if we don't keep an eye on effectively core developer work for Ethereum, then we're not going to be able to operate successfully as an institutional Ethereum staking provider. So we find ourselves effectively watching what Ethereum core devs are doing for other reasons. It sort of gets more interesting from there. We do think that we're going to see staking become cheaper through light client technology, but that reality is probably still a year away. But in that sense, it's definitely related to our core business. But yeah, as I sort of mentioned to Lucas, we've got a few people in the team who are really passionate about this. So even if it wasn't, I don't know, there's a few reasons why we're doing it is the answer, but it's close enough to what we do normally. Yeah. All right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Give it up. Where are you off to now?
I've actually got to get ready for a trip tomorrow.
Okay. We'll all see you there. I don't know.
In Melbourne, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
I'm not watching the Origin.
That's okay. Fair enough. Go Queensland. I'm going to delete that, obviously. Who's next? Let's go to SwyftX. Give it up for Amanda. All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. SwyftX couldn't afford to bring their product guy, so they sent their lawyer. Normally, we'd have Tommy, our head of product, come, but today you've got me. I'm the Deputy General Counsel at SwyftX. So nice to see everybody, lots of familiar faces. Wanted to start with our rebrand, or as they say internally, brand refresh. So you'll see, SwyftX, we've been a crypto exchange that's been operating in the Australian market and New Zealand market for a while now. We've recently undergone a slight update, refresh, and it's kind of all over the place, kind of everywhere, not all over the place, sorry. And we've been listing assets nonstop. So we've got 350 plus assets for trading. We've got, recent listings as well. We've got meme coins galore if you're interested in that. So keep an eye out and definitely subscribe to all our different forms of socials as well. We've got all the different crypto features you need. We've got auto invest, bundles, rewards, and more, and also a number of different product offerings in the pipeline. I can't say too much about it just yet, but moving forward, there's a lot of exciting stuff. The lawyer in me is cringing a little bit at the number that's on the iPhone. Just don't look there. It's not financial product advice. I'm not saying that if you invest with us, you will definitely get that number there, but you know what? It is what it is. A little bit about digital currency exchanges, about SwyftX. We're Austrac registered. We've got 24/7 support, and we're Australian based. So for Australians, by Australians. I'm not Australian, but I didn't make it. So, but I actually wanted to talk about the state of regulation in Australia, and I know Tim's talked about it, and he stole a lot of my words, out of my mouth. But Australia is one side of the track. I also wanted to touch on things globally because what's happening on a global scale really affects what's happening here for us. And what we're seeing at a macro level is things in other jurisdictions are actually picking up in terms of legislation. Other countries are beginning to implement lots of different rules, particularly around licensing. So, for example, we've got the whole MiCA regulation that's kicking off, and if you aren't aware, what that regulates is essentially stablecoins. So you might have seen that, for example, larger exchanges who operate globally, like Binance or OKX, they might have started saying, hey, you won't be able to trade certain pairings or certain stable coins if you live in Europe, like USDT, etc. This is because of the recent MiCA changes, and that kicks in from the 1st of July. The interesting thing around the MiCA changes is you will only be able to trade in Europe specific stablecoins that have been approved by the European Council, but currently no stablecoins have yet been approved. So everyone's kind of been in this state of flux. It's made things very difficult for, obviously, people wanting to trade stablecoins in Europe, global exchanges as well. There are applications currently in for approval, but it's still very much a wait and see process. How does this affect things in Australia? Well, at the recent blockchain week, there was talk by ASIC, and I also spoke with Treasury, that we will likely see some form of stablecoin bill coming into play in Australia. How this will look like, we don't fully know yet. From memory, there was, a consultation paper a while ago around this, but if we have a change of government, they might just fully swap it all around. And given it was so long ago, chances are they're going to lift it, redraft it, and consult again. But if we've got something concrete to base our future legislation around, like the MiCA legislation, that's probably what we've got. In the US, with stablecoins, we've got the Loomis-Gillibrand legislation, so it's a bill. It's likely going to pass, apparently. So apparently it's got bipartisan support as well. And that similarly regulates stablecoins too. So what Australia will likely do is look at these two forms of regulation and mirror these in the coming times. Anyway, I feel like I've talked about regulation for a lot. I don't know how much time I've got. Happy to take questions.
Questions? Ooh, we got a few.
Okay.
One sec. I got to do the routine. I'll go to you first, Daniel.
So much to unpack there, but ultimately I would like to see if this is happening in MiCA, then essentially that is their way of cutting off with the payment rails without us having
100%.
these mass. And so if anyone hasn't noticed that the U.S. presidential election at the moment is around cryptocurrency. And so my question is to you, you've said that they may mirror those, but what happens if we see a major shift in America where, we don't have this issue around stable coins and they're freely, how do you kind of see this globally kind of being impacted on different geo regions being able to transact in stable coins and some not being able to, because then it kind of comes down to, different countries. So just interested on your perspective there.
It's really interesting you raise that, right? Because at the moment, we're currently facing this issue in relation to AML, CTF, Sunrise issues. So, okay, I'm going to completely geek out on you guys in relation to FATF, which, in case you guys didn't know, it goes to anti-money laundering and KYC and stuff like that. But the Sunrise issue goes to the fact that essentially with the travel rule, different jurisdictions have not necessarily implemented the FATF rules, right, at different times. So to go to your point, Danielle, if, for example, different jurisdictions don't have different stablecoin legislations, then how can DCEs in different jurisdictions interact with each other? So at the moment, this is a live issue that is being faced from an AML, CTF, or CFT-like perspective, and we have not yet fixed that. I think, though, what's going to happen in relation to stablecoins is it's a very economic policy issue with stablecoins. It's one that's very dear to a lot of politicians and government bodies' hearts because it goes so much to economic policy. It ties in a lot with CBDCs, and I think going back to the whole US piece, they've raised that the Loomis-Gillibrand bill has bipartisan support, meaning that regardless of whether or not Trump wins or Biden wins, it's going to pass, purely because of the whole consumer protection piece. So it's likely that, it doesn't matter. From a stablecoin piece, it's going to be regulated in the US anyway. But in other jurisdictions, it still stands to be seen, whether we'll see the Sunrise issue play out from a stablecoin piece as well.
But if you have US and Europe,
the other pieces are probably, yeah.
Yeah, hi. So my question, sort of like a future-looking question because it doesn't seem relevant today, but I've been trying to figure out at what point does technology make it almost impossible, I'm not an anarchist, but almost impossible for these regulators to sort of dictate terms. So, for example, Bitcoin, as an example, when it came out, they couldn't censor it because of technical reasons. So I'm trying to figure out what's the next technical leap as a legal advisor. Would you say when technicians reach this line, they'll have sort of crossed the Rubicon or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult because, look, I'm going to be honest, from a regulatory perspective, regulation is always playing catch up anyway. So technology is always 10 steps ahead. it's difficult because that's just the way the cycle works. We draft legislation and it takes so long. I mean, we've seen from the consultation process, right? We go through how many rounds of questions, consulting, and then drafts, and then going back to the draft again, and then going back, scrapping everything. Oh my God. But the technology keeps forging ahead. So I can't really answer your question because I can't predict where the technology will go. I'd like to say when maybe we get brain chips. Maybe.
I didn't mean when. I meant sort of like what kind of technology what might one envision. I'm trying to look for a vision to aim at rather than a date. Do you know what I mean?
I think, do you mean like, sorry, maybe I'm not really understanding your question. Like, what kind of technology should we aim for to, maybe it's more like about educating the regulators. I think that is probably the best thing, or is the case that we want to circumvent regulation.
Not to be held hostage.
Not to be
Actually
held
the point.
hostage.
Yeah.
The best way to not be held hostage is to inform the legislation.
Okay.
So to be a part of drafting it.
Yeah.
So to take part in all the policies, to work with regulators. So to teach them and be at the forefront of it. So imagine how great it'd be if you were creating the tech and you're the one creating the rules for it. How cool would that be? That would be awesome, right? Then you definitely wouldn't be held hostage by it.
Time for two more questions, one here and Lachlan.
Yeah, hi. Do most companies, exchanges like yourselves, have AFSL licenses themselves?
Not all companies have AFSL licenses. Companies that do trade to provide financial services or trade financial products do need to have AFSLs.
So SwyftX has an AFSL?
SwyftX does not currently have an AFSL,
Okay.
that being because it doesn't provide any financial services.
Okay.
That being said, SwyftX is AUSTRAC registered, and if moving forward, the scheme goes as per the consultation paper, then we will need to have an AFSL.
Don't you see the forevision of most companies like yourself to start getting an AFSL
Exactly.
right now?
So
Because they're going to be hard to be.
Look, I can't divulge too much because obviously that's all part of the. Yeah. I can't say too much.
She'd have to shoot you after.
Look, I don't get paid enough to commit murder.
One last question, I guess. I guess with regulation in this sort of space, a lot of it, you could probably generalize, is predictable in the sense that consumer protection will continue the same sort of way. Europe will have the extraterritoriality they have with like the GDPR, that sort of stuff will continue. It's just more a matter of having the regulation to actually spell it out to force people to comply. But I was wondering, from your stance, has anything happened that's unusual or that didn't go the way you would have expected it to have gone?
I think what has not gone the way I expected to go is Hong Kong. So I don't know if you guys have been following the saga that is Hong Kong and the various digital currency exchanges. Oh, Fong is like nodding her head. The various digital currency exchanges that have been pulling out of Hong Kong. So some background. Hong Kong introduced a licensing regime, essentially, for all their digital currency exchanges. And it is a strict licensing regime. And for all extents and purposes, like, great, at least there's some form of clarity. And at first, there was like a huge barrage of like applications. But then, and it was due by like a certain date. But then eventually, people started to actually withdraw their applications. This, I think, started happening as a result of people realizing they weren't going to get their applications approved by the SFC, being the Hong Kong regulator, our equivalent of ASIC. So I think that definitely has not gone the way I expected, or I think how the SFC expected as well, because even though they've been pretty bullish in terms of releasing or approving like ETFs as well, but yet when it comes to this whole licensing thing, it's like, oh, you know, we're so strict, but now we're not going to have any crypto exchanges that are going to be licensed. Very awkward. So I, like, it, you know, who's going to be trading those ETFs now? It's kind of a strange situation. So I think that is something no regulator expected and no one in the market kind of expected. I wonder, though, if it's also kind of the market sending a message to regulators. Maybe we won't play ball if you won't, you know, make it fair for us.
Fantastic. All right, everybody join me in giving a round of applause to Amanda. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right, now we get to my favorite, our favorite, if I can get this right. Hopgood, we've already done that. Do we know Hopgood now? We do. Cadena, let's go. Damian, up on stage. Everybody loves tax, right?
I was going to say.
Free tax advice, everyone?
No. Dear God, no free tax advice. So just a little bit of a background about Cadena. We're all about smart tax and commercial solutions. We help our clients optimize their business and personal structures so it works for them and their way of life, from usual Australian tax and run-of-the-mill businesses to cross-border structures, crypto tax issues, advice for complex funds management and tech businesses. We're here to streamline your tax journey by providing simple and pragmatic advice. So if you don't know too much about me, my name is Damian Lloyd. I'm a tax lawyer specializing in domestic structuring and, most importantly, the taxation of crypto assets. I am a former ATO officer. That's why Tim was having a dig at me earlier. And I've held several positions at the ATO throughout my tenure. I've written private rulings on crypto assets. You won't see my name against any of them, but most of them are relied on quite heavily. I've run several crypto audits and investigations. I've advised on the less than ideal web guidance that exists, and I've been deeply involved in the law reform space for the ATO, namely on crypto, being a representative at the Council of Financial Regulators. Thanks to Mark for inviting me here today, and thank you for HopgoodGanim for hosting the event. Sorry, 11. HopgoodGanim. I thought today I'd just give some tax time updates. I think maybe talk around regulatory positions might have been done to death if I start talking about tax. But for the 2023-2024 financial year, so the one that's coming to a close in 5 days, surprisingly, crypto is not a tax time priority. So in previous years, crypto assets have specifically been listed, but that's no longer the case. So the ATO is instead focusing on work-related deductions and deductions related to rental properties. So it just appears that the ATO has discontinued what people would be familiar with their letter prompts. It doesn't seem like that's happening this year, and they might have transitioned to prompting in My Tax itself. So this might suggest a couple of things. Crypto compliance could be increasing in the industry such that the ATO feels comfortable with crypto users more broadly. It could also be that crypto is just not a priority and there's other issues that warrant their attention. Or it could be, and I suspect maybe this one is the case, that the ATO is losing its capability and does not feel confident to boast about the broad work that it's doing in the crypto space. That said, the next update relates to the Joint Chiefs of Global Tax Enforcement. They're commonly known as the J5, and so it's leading tax revenue bodies in the main 5 developed countries that work together, and in May of this year, the IRS specifically visited Australia and conducted several training sessions with government agencies across Australia. So that's ASIC and ATO included. And it was designed to improve their capability with crypto and cybercrime detection specifically. So while crypto isn't appearing as a tax time priority, it might be that the general compliance, the civil compliance for crypto is waning a bit, but they're focusing more of their efforts on the crypto crime space. It appears that a major focus for the ATO might be that, unfortunately, they still hold the view that crypto assets are a method to facilitate tax crime, and that's rather unfortunate given that it seems to be a stigma that the industry can't seem to shake, even though the nature of blockchain systems are that they are publicly viewable, and if you run clustering techniques, it flushes out most of criminal behavior anyway. I would just note on the J5 and IRS training that it seems to be fairly common communication between the different jurisdictions. Other tax authorities are known to share their insights and run training programs, and I think the last one that the IRS conducted with the ATO happened in 2019, so it's probably just an update for training. The next update relates to data matching with digital currency exchanges, which some colleagues in here would be familiar with. It's a standard arrangement with Australian-based digital currency exchanges, but oddly enough, the renewing of the data matching protocol doesn't mention the ATO's capability with purely on-chain transactions. It only talks about the transactions that happen on digital currency exchanges based in Australia, so it may not encompass more decentralized transactions or those occurring on foreign exchanges. I can't comment on whether or not you should partake in particular transactions, but the information is out there about the data matching protocol. I thought I would give a very brief update. I know some people in this room have planned to heckle me on my views that crypto is not property. But I thought I would give an update about the taxation objection that I've put in with the ATO. So if you're not aware already, late last year I submitted a private ruling claiming that crypto is not taxable. Naturally, the ATO disagreed and has rejected that conclusion, but I'm in the process of having that decision formally reviewed. I've also submitted a Freedom of Information request just to get a peek at the documents that the ATO are considering, and it's brought back a fairly large amount of documents, mainly around their internal thinking. To make a long story short, a lot of my former colleagues know that I'm testing the law in this space, and they are curious to see where it ends up. They're also keeping, unsurprisingly, a very close eye on the outcome of the case. I suspect that a final decision might be released in the next 2 to 3 months, but like I say with all clients engaging with the ATO, there's never a guarantee, and it could just as easily be 12 months. And the final point is, unfortunately, actually it might be going back to the point made by SwyftX around the back and forth of policy making and consultation. Tax hasn't seen any of this. A lot of the people in this room participated in the Board of Tax consultation that happened between, I think it was December 21 over September 22. And since the Board of Tax was scheduled to provide its final report to government in February of this year, we've had absolute silence. The report has not been made public, and none of the submissions, even though only 2 of them out of 41 are confidential, they refuse to release those submissions. My gut impression is that the impacts outlined by the report are so severe that publishing the results would be detrimental to the ongoing taxation of crypto assets by the ATO and reflect negatively on government and the ATO itself. So I would not hold your breath, unfortunately, to see that report or any of the submissions released anytime soon. So a bit mixed, largely negative, unfortunately, but at least from what I can see so far, the ATO is not actively looking at people's general crypto use, provided that you are declaring it. I might open it to questions if anyone has any.
Any questions for the ATO? I mean, sorry. Cadena. Yep, right here, one sec.
How do I go about just like challenging the ATO on tax things that I think don't make sense? For example, like taxing wrapping assets or bridging, things like that.
Yeah, so there's a number of ways. Well, actually, there's really just two. You can either do as I did, and you put in a private ruling, and you can do this with or without legal assistance. I don't know what your background is, but I'm confident that you'd put together a fulsome submission, and you effectively set out your reasons why you disagree with the ATO view, and then it is up to them to consider the information that you've put forward, and then they'll make a decision. If they produce a result, so with a private ruling, they are obligated to provide you with an answer. If it's a negative answer, then you have the option to have that reviewed. So similar to my situation, you would lodge an objection, which is effectively like a more comprehensive private ruling application. It's just to have the decision internally reviewed by the ATO. There's no timeframes for that one, unfortunately. Generally with private rulings, I think there's a 60-day, if they haven't commenced any action or haven't reached a decision in 60 days, you can compel them to provide a response. If they haven't done so in a further 60 days, then you can lodge an objection and have, I guess, like the next process set off. If you go through the objection stage and it's unfavourable, your only other recourse is going to the ART now. I think it's changed from the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. I think it's now the Review Tribunal. Or you go to the federal court. So I'm not at that stage yet, but it's something that I'm not taking lightly. I'm considering it because there are pros and cons with taking a case to a tribunal versus a court. And then it would be up to the court to decide. So you take it out of the ATO's hands, but then there's also cost and other risk that comes with that. The other method is you lodge your assessment. You lodge your tax return according to your view or the ATO's view, and then you object to that on the basis that you disagree with the ATO view, or you wait for the ATO to challenge your tax return as you've lodged it. If you lodge according to your own view, a lot more risky, just because there is published guidance out there from the ATO, and they might claim that your view is not reasonably arguable. So if you're going to go down that road, generally recommend that you get legal advice, and they prepare something called a reasonably arguable position paper. If a lawyer is not willing to write you a reasonably arguable position paper, you might have to take that as a sign that maybe the argument isn't reasonable, but you can always seek a second opinion as well. So, no, that's okay.
Any
Thank
other?
you for the question.
We got one more question, and yeah, Hopgood.
That's a lot of test case.
Rachel?
Thank you. I've got one really short one and then a longer one. So the first one is, can you publicise a public ruling?
A public ruling or a private ruling?
Private ruling. Can you publicise a private ruling?
So...
Maybe it is a longer one.
No. So when, do you mean like the decision of the private ruling? So they're already made available on the ATO website, but they have all the personal identifiers stripped out, and they're called edited private advice instead, but you can't rely on them. So yeah, it's intentionally designed that way. So the private ruling that the ATO issued for me is freely available. People can look at it. I'll have to look it up after this, but I can send it, or I can send it to Mark and he can distribute it around if people are interested.
That'd be interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. A book club.
I have a question about if you are successful and the ATO agrees with you. How do you think that would change the tax implications for Australia, especially for long-term hodlers?
Okay, so it's a great question. It's something that I've considered for, 3 or 4 years. So if the ATO agree, or even courts agree that crypto is not property, it carries with it significant consequences. It means that you can interfere with anyone's crypto without consequence. So naturally, government and industry's response would be, we need protections. So either, that would ultimately come in the form of law reform, where you create rights with respect to crypto. So it could be similar to copyright legislation, that if you're engaging in particular transactions, so if you're engaging in crypto transactions, then legislation creates rights and says that people aren't allowed to infringe on your own or on your holding of crypto assets, in which case the legislation itself might give you property rights. But then that would bring it back into taxation. So it's a catch-22. If there aren't any property rights in crypto, then arguably it's not taxable. But then if you don't have any protections, then you open yourself up to greater risk. So it's you pick your poison, but my broad view is that if there aren't any rights, then we need to create them.
What makes you think that crypto is not property?
So
what elements, what is your argument to that? You look at National Bank at Ainsworth with Lord Wilberforce, he makes it quite clear in that area. So I don't understand how you've come to that conclusion.
Yeah, so in the Ainsworth case specifically, they say before a right or an interest can amount to property or be entered into the category of property, it has to possess certain characteristics. I'm not disputing the characteristics, I'm disputing the fact that the threshold test is that there needs to be a right or an interest. And rights or interests are accepted for common law purposes to be Herfeldian in nature. So I've got a YouTube video and a TikTok that discusses this, but I didn't think I would need to link any of these today. And it's an argument that I raise in the objection itself as well. But the central argument is that in order for a right or an interest to amount to property, we need to be talking about a right that carries with it an enforceable obligation. So for Herfeldian purposes, it's referred to as a claim right. Yeah. And at least for the ATO, the Commissioner takes the view that crypto is not a chosen action. And so from my standpoint, and it goes back to the Colonial Bank and Winnie case, where I forget the judge's name, unfortunately. Actually, no, I do remember it. I think it's Justice Fry, or Chief Justice Fry. He says that property rights, or maybe it's even rights more, no, it is property rights, are separated into choses in possession, so those tangible objects, and choses in action, yes. I take the view that all property is a chosen action, and if it has physicality, then the law grants additional protections like under torts and other bodies of law. If something is not enforceable by a court, then I don't see it as any different than a mere expectancy or a moral obligation. Similar to a beneficiary of a discretionary trust, they have no enforceable right against the trustee in terms of exercising the discretion. So I would say that they don't have any, and I think courts have said this as well, that discretionary beneficiaries don't have any property in the trust itself. So I think when, and I've considered a lot of domestic and international property and crypto cases on this point. Even in Rusco and Cryptopia, which I think Justice Jackman is relying on to say that crypto is property, or at least that it's arguably property. A lot.
Jackman jumped over that issue.
He did.
Stevens from Oxford University and didn't say anything. He just says, I'm going to assume since both parties haven't raised the issue that I'll accept it as property for this matter.
Yeah, so unfortunately a lot of Australian cases do make that assumption, but I would say it's arguable that courts don't need to rely on that assumption in like future cases. Does that get close to what you were looking for?
I'm not looking for anything.
No.
I have a
So,
particular view. I've written papers on this.
Yeah.
sorry guys, I'd love to continue. Maybe for next month we actually get a panel going on this. But in the interest and respect for other guests, we've got to actually get to the next one. So
No, that's okay. I was hoping to avoid the property thing.
yeah, thank you so much, Damian, for the free tax advice.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh.
Not free. Sorry, Harry. Harry will kill me. Shout out to the Harry Dell. All right, and let's get Maryna up on stage next from Syla. All right, hang on, let me get the clicker ready. Click, 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 click. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm going to touch that. And this is the final presentation for the evening, and then we can continue the debate.
Hi guys, so my name is Maryna and I'm co-founder of Syla, which is a tax software for crypto. Little disclaimer for everyone, especially lawyers. All right, let's be honest. Who is the last bird, not early bird, when it comes to tax? Or perhaps if you are late bird to some things in life, like meetups or events, you are last to plan, right? And right now we are like still 5 days, including today, before the end of financial year. So you still have 4 days, including tomorrow, to plan what you can do tonight and the next 4 days to save on crypto tax. So, and the last minute tax tip for everyone, as accountants would know, is number one tip: you can sell your crypto that you think is not a good investment. If you know that you have gains, that can help you to offset your gains, of course, if you don't want them. But at the same time, you have to be careful, making sure that it is not wash sale, which is like an American term for Part 4A division in Australia. So that means you don't want to purchase it again next year for the same quantities and the same kind of investments. So this is the tip. Now, in a tax software like Syla, you can see your portfolio. So you can actually see your unrealized gains and losses, which helps you to do that exercise. So you can review what your current balances are and select the ones that are negative and consider if you want to sell them and realize your losses this year. Now, imagine it is 1st of July. So it would be Monday, you wake up. What is the best thing to do after you had coffee? Hopefully you will be smiling because you've done everything that you could before the 30th of June. And now in July, you can actually help yourself or your accountant and you can take screenshots, especially when it comes to foreign exchanges that don't give you good data when it comes to running balance or holding statements. I believe the majority of Australian exchanges are really good at that, so you can download them at any time. But if you are with some foreign platforms, you may not get it, that opportunity to come back in time. So you can save your bacon by taking screenshot and making sure that you actually know what the balances were in the point of time, because you will not be able to come back or travel back in time. And it's helpful also for some blockchains, like the ones that don't give you actually the balance on 30 June. For example, on EtherScan, you can go back and have a look what was the balance on 30 June 2024. However, with other blockchains, like on Solana, for example, you cannot actually have a look what was the balance on 30 June. So you have to know how to reconcile your crypto tax. And the word like reconcile, it means just making sure that everything is accurate when it comes to tax calculations. And you help yourself by saving in dollar value when you know that the balances are correct, what you meant to have in your software and what you actually really had. That helps you to save also on compliance if you work with an accountant, because they will not have to do that exercise for you. So less time means you actually have more time in your life. In Syla, we just released a special feature where there is a tab and you can see your balances. And this tab is designed on a purpose for everyone, including accountants, so that you can actually have a look by exchange, by platform, or blockchain or wallet, where you can see by asset all the quantities and the market value, what was on 30 June. You can also come back in time to any point in time. For example, like if you need for some reason to know the balance in December, you can do that as well. That actually helps you to calculate what it was at that point in time and compare it to the balances in your statements. Very helpful feature. Now, when it comes to tax time, what is the right time when you should be lodging your tax return? I see that a lot of people don't know that it's not a good idea to lodge before 14 July. So if you are an early bird person and you prefer to do things quickly as soon as it comes, you better know that what the tax office thinks. They say the stakes are high if you lodge in early July. So if you lodge your tax return before 14th of July, you are very likely to be audited or reviewed, because the tax office has experienced that people that lodge before 14th of July are very likely to make mistakes. There is also perhaps not all information available through the pre-fill, so there could be no information on your wages and stuff like that. If you invest in a cash managed funds, you actually want to do that even later, like in August or perhaps even September, because you need all those statements from your funds. Perhaps everyone is now at least second year in crypto. So that means you're not doing your crypto tax for the first time. And you might have long-term gains, which is a great thing because you can save on tax again, on the 50% discount if you are an individual or trust. And good news are that you can also optimize your tax by selecting your parcel method. So that means you can be FIFO or last in, first out, LIFO, HIFO, and we also have in Syla LTFO, which is the lowest tax first out special algorithm. So what is good about that is that in Syla from day one, we are very focused on accuracy. So in Syla, you can select by financial year different parcel method, which keeps you safe from the tax office. In the case if you change your parcel selection, it means you may change the previous history of what you already declared in the previous years. So it's important to keep your previous years accurate as to what it was. If you were declaring and used, let's say, FIFO, and now you want to change to LTFO, it's important you actually keep that history accordingly. The deadline. For individuals, you probably know it's on the 31st of October 2024. And if you are using your tax agent, that would be on 15 May 2025. So you have plenty of time if you're using a professional. So the tip is that if you know that you will be paying tax on crypto, you can actually delay that payment by using a tax professional. So you need to make sure that you have everything in order. Like beforehand, it would be advisable to anyway record all your information like beforehand. And about Syla. So we are like 100% focused on Australian market, which means we help Australian investors, and we have special accounts for SMSFs, trusts, and companies, not only individuals. Which accountants would know there are some differences between those. In Syla, we also have multi-accounts, so you can actually add all those entities and you can see them and easily switch. Syla is also a tax partner of major Australian exchanges. And tonight I'm sharing with you a special code. If you would like to sign up like before the 30th June 2024, you can get the 30% discount. So it's early 30. Please feel free to ask any questions.
Firstly, before I have my question, I didn't know Maryna was going to be here, so she didn't pay me to say this, but she's been my accountant for many years, and the screenshots are a real thing. She makes me, or has made me do them for many years, so, and she keeps me on top of my taxes. My question is to you. Quite a few people that I know in the space feel, and this might be a tax time, and then also a legal question, oh, I've gotten away without having to pay because the tax office hasn't come after me yet. And then I'll say to them, okay, well, have you ever done a transaction KYC'd? And they're like, yes, I've done transactions with Binance or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, you just haven't claimed your taxes. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting away with it. It's just that if you get audited. So I guess my question to you, for those people who haven't claimed their taxes for multiple years, or I should say their crypto tax, they've filed their taxes, and now they're just hoping that to not ever file and that they won't get caught out. Hypothetically, if they started filing now, like, is it easy for the government to find out, oh, hey, well, what about for the 5 years before? And what kind of advice would you have to somebody that hasn't filed for like the last 5 or 6 years, just hoping that they're going to get away with it? And I know that, sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name that presented earlier, that you said that it wasn't a focus this year of tax time. So then people are just going to be like, oh, I'm getting away with it for another year. Yeah, what would you say to those people? Clearly, I'm not one of them because you do my crypto tax every year.
Good question. So, of course, like the rules are that not knowing the rules of the game doesn't mean that you will win the game. So, the first rule, number one, is you actually can be tracked, right? Because it's digital, it's all online. So the ATO at some point will get information if they don't have now. The second question is all about the ATO, of course, like will they action that information that they have? And the answer is it depends, right? So it depends on their interest and depends on their program every year. So the best thing that you can do, the calls are coming, right? So it's definitely advisable to clear your history and declare that. Of course, when it's like over 2 years for individuals and over 4 years for companies and other entities, you may need to do an objection rather than an amendment of your tax return. So it may take more time and professional to be involved, because writing an objection is probably not the good thing to do that yourself.
Would you get a penalty for that? If you didn't declare
Actually, if you do that yourself, if you initiate the process, you are likely not getting any penalty. You just will have to pay interest on late payment, because if you pay tax now for something that happened 4 years ago, you will accrue interest rate on that amount. That would be the most advisable thing to do, is like clear your history, make sure you declare it so that you don't have those problems in the future, especially when you're hopefully wealthy and have large portfolio. Because unexplained wealth is a real closure at the tax office. They don't like those events. When they see you are driving in your Lambo and you have not paid tax, that would be the worst thing, right? Yeah.
Other tax advice questions, folks? Oh, Lucas.
Can I move to
Well, you still have to pay before you leave.
I just got to counter that a little bit with the word said that avoidance is a word. But for me, I was buying coffees and miners and so much stuff I have no records of, and I bought on Mt. Gox, and so much shit I have no hundreds, thousands of transactions. But it's just like using cash to me. No one recorded all those cash transactions, so I just a bit offended by those words of avoidance because minimizing. Why am I paying tax on when I bought a coffee with, travel by bit that probably cost me $80,000 in today's money for a cup of coffee? It's not that we're avoiding, it's that we don't care because we were just paying with cash. So it's not really.
How many people in the room have paid crypto cash? Wow.
Well, that's interesting data.
What's the word? Personal use is the word. It was for me as personal use.
Yeah, thanks, Lucas, for the good question. Yeah, okay, well, this is your opinion, right? So the ATO may see it completely different. But it's really good question. And I remember our conversation actually probably 4 years ago. I told you that you should lodge your private ruling for the personal use exemption. Because I think at that time it was actually a good time to do that. But right now the tax office has been seen not really wanting to issue those private rulings where they would agree because since they changed their opinion in 2014 when they saw it's a commercial good for them, they actually don't really agree for exemptions unless you really isolate your activity. So that means you have a separate wallet where you actually buying and I should say acquiring Bitcoin as an example, and then immediately purchasing some goods and keeping good record of that. So you have the receipts for your watch or whatever you purchased under the 10,000, right, Australian, and that can exempt you, that's true. But you have to have good records. So you have to have those bills and everything so you can actually track and tell to the ATO that, okay, I purchased exactly this item and I didn't keep Bitcoin for 5 years. This has actually been acquired just yesterday, and yeah, there are some amazing private rulings in the past where you can see and people got exempt for 5,000 Ethereum and stuff like that. That doesn't happen any longer.
What's the thing there?
Yeah, good question. For loyalty points, we actually do have clarification from the tax office why all those Qantas points and Virgin, they are specially actually exempt because you don't expect them go up in value. You can buy still one flight or one hotel or whatever it is. So there are special ruling from the tax office where they go into explanation why it is exempt. And there could be things like that. For example, on CoinStash, right, they have actually loyalty points. But you have to be careful because if it is an investment, if it can be classified as an investment and it can go in value, then that's going to be an investment on capital account. And it's not going to be exempt.
So, was there? No? It was just a hand up. Okay. I think someone was just stretching. All right, so, yes. Thank you, Maryna.
Thank you, guys.
All righty. Okie dokie. Wow. Future ideas for panels and podcasts came out of that for sure. We've moved to Luma. We still will push stuff on meetups and stuff, but Luma's great. I don't know if you guys know this on meetups, but you actually have to run all separate different meetups because they don't let you do things on the one time zone. I don't know why. Luma at least does, and we can just have a calendar page there. But speaking of events, we've got Danielle standing at the back there. It was the 19th, I think it was, that you guys had your event?
Yeah, sorry, we had to move it because I got stuck in Dallas.
Oh, okay. So it's
I know that you guys moved this and that.
Oh, no, it's okay. So did you have the event or
Yeah, it was great.
you had it on the 19th?
Main point debate. We could have had a few more lawyers there.
I think there was a replay, on Twitter. Is that the video that's on there on Restream?
Yeah, we're still working. We don't have your fancy setup, but yeah, we're trying doing the live streaming. So.
I will write down what's in this. All of it's rented and stolen. I don't know. So borrowed. But so yes, All Things Blockchain do a lot of great events here. Lucas at the back here with great questions. You've got an event on tomorrow, starting at 6 p.m. Where is that at, sir?
Down the precinct.
Okay, awesome.
A few of the speakers tonight about tax, so come down. If you want.
Fantastic. Round 2, folks. Fight. And then there's the, I forget what day it is, but there's the Web3 Brisbane doing their event on the Saturday. So this is really blockchain week for Brisbane.
I know, we didn't even coordinate it, it just happened.
It just happened. It's serendipitous, and you know what? It's just meant to be. But give me another round of applause, please, for all the speakers and presenters. Thank you again for your time, amazing insights. Questionable about whether it's free or not. Hopgood, Hopgood, Hopgood. And
I
this
think
one.
that you should do, for all of your people that record it, you can do an activation that they have to count how many times there's a Hopgood, and they should win something.
Yeah, exactly. Free legal advice from Hopgood. Anyways, folks, thank you to Hopgood. We are going to be around here till 8:30 or so for networking and drinks and stuff. And I've been cut off already. There you go. Thanks, everyone.